and all that.
Okay, so I started recording and we should be going live. So,
All right. Well, I messaged Raleigh and let him know, hey, if you want to be a co-host today, you can. If not, no big deal. But
yeah, I'm going to adjust my lighting.
Roger that. Oh, there's Haley. Oh boy. All right, so we're gonna do the Epstein thing.
What's that?
Yeah, yeah, we covered it. Sorry, I was just doing the thing.
Oh, Haley's finally, there's Haley in the waiting room.
Yeah, I was gonna say too. Yeah, just as we said something, she was there.
All right, so let's go through it real quick. We're going to do, we'll do quick Maxwell, we'll do quick Taiwan, Cambodia. What was the name one you were going to, you'll do tariffs, and I guess we're going to have to talk about Gaza.
Yeah, I was gonna do yeah, the EU
Yeah.
tariffs thing. Tariffs and Gaza. Sorry. Include Maxwell, Thailand, EU, or three EU, and then Gaza. And then if something else comes up, we'll
Yeah.
swing on it.
Yeah. Okay. All right, we can start letting people in.
All right, I will admit all in three, two, one. Boom. Oh yeah, I'm gonna pin you. And then I'll welcome people in as they come in.
Okay. Can you see if it looks like we're going live?
Yeah, let me open up a tab here. Yeah, we're live.
Yep.
It says
Okay. Five, four, three, two, one. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our show. We thank you for stepping into Cafe Americana on this Sunday, July 27, 2025. So, some of the topics we're going to talk about today are can't get away from it, Epstein. We'll talk about Todd Blanche going down to see Ghislaine, and I say that with due respect, Ghislaine Maxwell. And we're going to talk about, briefly, we'll talk about Thailand and Cambodia, the little conflict and Trump getting involved. And then we'll talk about tariffs coming up. And then we'll probably talk about Gaza, Hamas, Israel, the latest on that. So we're going to start off with Maxwell. So Todd Blanche, the deputy attorney general, went down to see her in prison, and he's conducted 9 hours worth of interviews with her attorneys present, and her attorneys say that it was wonderful experience and that she answered all questions, and but the of course the counter argument to all of that is is it performative or are they really trying to get to the bottom of stuff, And this is just to me, this is politics at its height. First of all, if you want to do something right, like that. Maybe include some kind of Democrat off the Judicial Committee to go down and do it. But I don't know if they can. I don't know if they're allowed to. I really don't know what the parameters are behind that with all the legalities, you know. So, it'll be interesting to see because we don't know what she said.
Right.
And we don't know, we just heard cooperation. Of course, this is all about protecting Trump in the big picture. Um, but what I want to see is you know, I've talked about it in the past, like Clinton's been in the flight logs 26 times. That's out there in the public domain. That's indisputable. But Clinton doesn't back away from it. He basically says, I was on those excursions for 2 years because I wanted to get money for my foundation, which makes perfect sense. So, I haven't heard any of the victims say that they were forced to have sex with Clinton or had sex with Clinton or Trump. So,
Right.
I heard the groping thing, but that all came out right when Kamala was very desperate right at the end of her campaign. They rolled out that one chick that said Trump groped her in 93 or something in front of Epstein. So that kind of got shot down and now it's trying to resurface. So I don't know where they go from here on that. Um, it's kind of, it's kind of getting, I think, to the point where it's just, it becomes idiot wind and people don't Raleigh, I'm making you a co-host. It doesn't I don't know how much this will swallow his presidency. After a while, people get bored with this stuff because there's no new information. But it's really going to depend on what MAGA sees. These Cash Patels and the Dan Bonginos of the world need to answer for this. They need to answer for their, conspiracy theories about this and their gung-ho-ness, and now they have nothing to show for it. So I don't know how we're
Yeah,
going to go. Go
I
ahead, man.
think this is a relief valve of some kind, whether it's for real or PR or whatever. I know that Bongino and Patel have put out public statements saying, "Listen, guys, there's a lot to go through. I've seen how really messed up it is. It's going to take time. Like, be patient, essentially, is what they're saying. So I'm sure that they are doing what they say they're doing. And I don't know, this Maxwell thing might be a relief valve of some kind, whether something substantial does. I know that they ask him about 100 people, something like that. I don't know that they're going to go after those people or whatever. Like I said, I think it's just more like a part of the process. And I did see criticism about it, about how unusual it happened to be, that such a high-ranking DOJ member who normally wouldn't handle the day-to-day or the particulars of a specific case because they would be leadership and they would be overseeing hundreds, if not thousands, of these things. And I would counter that by saying, well, it's an unusual situation. You have such a horrific criminal case that never really kind of got processed the way that it should have, at least as far as a lot of people think and feel today, including myself. And I know a lot of people out there are upset by this. I don't know, but I do know that I saw people portions of MAGA or criticism of it, and you got a grain of salt or boulder or mountain that if Trump pardons, it does pardoning her before the end, but like now, if he does it today, it'll be the end of his presidency. He's got to wait until further on. Well, it kind of doesn't matter because they offered her a bit of immunity for, like, listen, you sing like a bird, you don't have anything to worry about. And as far as I know, that was respected by the lawyers and her. And she was like, yeah, I'll say everything. But I do find it funny, though, regardless of who's in power, president never kind of went down and really had a conversation with her, at least as far as I know the facts to be. So I think that's unusual. Of course, she's in prison for what she did, and I don't think anybody wants to see her. I think that people would only be okay with an immunity or a pardon or a commutation, really is what it is, not a pardon, but um, I think they would only really be okay with that if people were brought to justice. But to not have that offset, it would be even worse. To play with that like a cat and a mouse, Like,
Yeah,
just kill the damn thing. Like you can't, you gotta, this has got strong emotion, regardless of what I think or feel. It's got strong, strong emotions on both sides of the aisle. And you can see that in two-way whenever it comes up. Aside from the third option is people are sick and tired of hearing it.
yeah, it's
Right.
really weird. There was somebody tried to float the idea that, well, she clammed up because she knew Trump was going to be president and then eventually she'll get a pardon. And I mean, that's so ridiculous. It's like, yeah, all right, I'll go to prison on the hopes that this guy gets elected and then he'll pardon me. Just ridiculous, when you could just come clean and get your immunity, but she didn't take any of that. So kind of interesting. Well, we'll see. We'll see how this goes. This isn't going to go
Do you want to
away.
see what Raleigh was thinking?
Yeah. Raleigh, why don't you come in because you're unmuted. You're part of you're our third. You're Andres today, Raleigh. So
Andre Raleigh.
yeah.
Yes, I guess my view on it is that, Biden had this list for 4 years, and he never released it. I mean, it's not like this list just has Trump on it and nobody else, and that's it. I mean, that's a ridiculous claim. Um, I mean, does anyone realistically believe that in 2029, if a Democrat is the president, that they're going to release this list?
That was
I,
my point. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, that's such BS. In fact, when he was arrested the first time, I believe Obama was president, or Obama became president right after that for 8 years. No progress was ever made on this. I mean, are we to believe that just Republicans are on this list and nobody else? That just Republicans? And that's no. They would have released the list if that was the case.
Well,
So
here's the problem too, Raleigh. We keep saying this list. What list? Yeah, there's just evidence that people
there's a
traverse
collection of
this.
evidence with different
Right.
people's names on it.
Yeah,
And every one of those names, everybody on those lists is in a completely 100% innocent. They were just hanging around Jeffrey Epstein for
right.
charity purposes, and none of them engaged with the girls. I mean, that's basically what we're supposed to
Listen, if
believe.
Well,
they really
and
they want to get down to the bottom of this, is you got to get these victims together but they have all of their statements. This is the
Right.
thing that kills me. It's like,
And
and
there's,
I've not seen one girl come out and say, yes, I had sex with Bill Clinton X amount of
no.
times, or have I had sex with Donald Trump X
No,
amount
and
of
like
times.
there's like 8 or 9 girls that later became like procurers for him or later became
Yeah.
people that helped him. There's like a set of photos of them that circulates online. And I was looking at one and one disappeared around December or something. And her whereabouts are completely unknown. I needed to find her name, but I just thought she was the most attractive of those 8, so I looked her up. That's I should admit to that, but yeah, so I looked her up to see what happened to her, and she disappeared in like December. And it's like every one of these people just either go into hiding or they disappear. Like, what happens to these people?
yeah, I was going to say
Why
to
aren't they
pig-
speaking? Why aren't they talking? Why aren't they
uh,
out front? I mean, they must be terrified.
yeah, I
Terrified.
was going to say Raleigh, and I can't believe I have my stupid thing. I'm sorry, guys. I had my flare on as I was going. I think it'd be even closer than that. You said, 2020, 28, that time frame. The other thing too is like it'll be even sooner than that. I see them using the rhetoric of it against Trump and the GOP. And the thing is, do we really think that the Democrats are going to come through on power and do jack squat for this in 20? I don't think so. I think that they're good. I think it's a rock to throw at Trump, but I don't think it's a serious thing they're going to be able to win an election on.
Well,
I mean,
look at
because
Shifty Shift with the Russia Gate, and he got censured. I mean, it's just like all of this stuff is just ridiculous. We we got
No,
to.
and the social issues are way more important than this.
Oh,
Like
they
the
are
the
100%. And
This
let me
is
tell
what
you something.
affects people's lives. I mean, this stuff that happens on an island in the Caribbean doesn't affect anyone, but this stuff affects our lives. Like when they start putting tampons in the men's room And they
but
start,
here's the
you know,
problem, Raleigh.
invading our schools and educating our kids with this shit. And
But but I agree. I understand what you're saying. Agree. But no, no, I'm gonna go the. I thought you were going a certain way. Let me tell you something. People get really focused on this, not on these nonsensical issues. Like if we think about the transgender issue, I'm telling you, that was a huge issue in this election.
it
Um,
was.
it was a huge issue in this election, and and because the Republicans were able to exploit Kamala on that issue, that really hurt her deeply, and that's what we focus on. But when we know that the trans, biological males in female sports is like infantile in terms of infant it's so small, I should say, that it's minor. It hasn't really very bad,
It's minor at the moment.
right,
If
but then
but
they
if it
can
keeps
roll out
going
one
and
girl
going,
who got hit in the face with a volleyball and a broken face, and they can roll that out and exploit that.
and
It's
then,
pretty
where does it go next? And where does it
exactly.
go after that? Because it's always one that once they get this domino out of the way, then they've got another cause
Yeah,
that they gotta, they gotta pump up and force down our throats and social engineer us. I mean, there will just be another one around the corner because this is their thing.
yeah.
They've been
Yeah,
proving it since basically since the end of World War II.
yeah.
They
I don't think the
pump up
Democrats
the next cause.
are going to be seriously using the Maxwell issue whatsoever. I mean, yeah, as a rock to throw at them, but beyond that, I don't see it happening because why would you, when you could be the classic Democrats again and pull it back to center and be like, listen, they're talking about all this other stuff. They
Right.
want the grievance campaign. Like, no, no, no. If you elect us again, then we're going to get back to brass tacks on, the working class, the blah, blah, blah.
Affordability. Right. Yeah.
That's
But we
another
have yet
more
to see
important
that.
issue than the Epstein
Right.
issue.
Yeah.
The
Well,
Epstein issue.
we have yet to see them have that in the thing. And plus, to be fair, 2026 is still quite a ways off, so
Yeah.
we won't know until we see it. But
All right, let's move on. We'll talk very briefly about Thailand and Cambodia. Um, so this Trump jumps in, and now all of a sudden we got a ceasefire, and deals are going to be made. This is like, I think you could just take Cambodia out, Thailand out, and put different factions of Vietnam. Like you put these different factions in, and then Taiwan. I meant to say, by the way, I apologize, not Thailand, Taiwan. Right? Is that, or do I got it right? I'm so out of
yeah,
touch, guys.
no,
I'm
no,
on
you're
the
good. Yeah,
road.
no, you're good. You're good. Thailand and Cambodia. Yeah,
Yeah,
33
Thailand, right?
dead,
Yeah,
200K
Taiwan is with
displaced.
China. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah. Trump
they
said,
have these border,
knock it off.
but they have these border clashes all the time. It's just that it
Right.
seemed like this one got a little ramped up. And now Trump's like, if you don't behave, I'm gonna mistreat you by way of trade. So it's the standard, it's the standard Trump fix. So I don't know. We'll see. But it seems like they are gonna have this ceasefire talks and whatever. We'll see.
Yeah, I
We'll,
think
we'll
the differentiator was just the intensity of this latest thing, but it
yeah.
looks like they're ramping down hopefully, but we'll see.
Okay. So now to the big thing. The Taco Trump, right? For 8/1, we have the deadline on tariffs.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. The EU, there are two big ones. The EU, and they can't. He was in Scotland. He talked to Ursula von der Leyen. They threatened to throw a 30% tariff on EU goods, and then also in the tank as well is or not in the tank, but Canada as well. So these looming deadlines, and I think you had mentioned, Lutnick said something about the seriousness of they've been flexible up to this point, but they've been weaving and making it more serious to be respect August 1st because it's going to come. Uh,
Well, eventually it has to come. You're gonna have to make a move here. You can't just, because eventually then your threats become shallow, and they become, there's nothing behind them. So I would like to see what happens here. I would like to see these other countries step. Listen, as a country, I just been traveling the United States, right? You see that sign back there. I'm in Hollywood at the moment and leaving today. But I've spent $8,000, $9,000 in 2 weeks just traveling the country. It's just utterly everything is too expensive, and because we need to be satisfied with stuff, and we rationalize it. Like me and Jackie rationalize things. We're like, well, we can have this meal because we're on vacation. Well, how many times can you do that? What we need to do is in reverse of that and say, you know what? I'm not buying this stuff. I'm not doing any of this stuff. So you other countries that help feed my gluttony, I'm out. So now you can suffer. I'm not going to buy your products, and I'll figure out how to, sustain myself, not be greedy, not be gluttonous, and then you can suffer when I don't buy your products and I don't spend $8,000, $9,000 on a trip cross country. So, I for these tariffs to work, that's what has to happen. It's just that I don't think as Americans we have the fortitude to say, "Oh, I'm gonna hands off on this stuff because it's coming from Canada," or hands off on this. I mean, obviously there are things we can't put our hands off on, but um, that's the unfortunate thing, and I don't know if these tariffs will work, but I want to see it happen. I'm tired of hearing talk, talk, talk. It's nice when you talk to talk and then you get a deal because people are afraid. But eventually it's going to come to a head when people say, "Yeah, yeah, Trump, I'm with you," and then they don't do anything. You got to force them into it, and then we got to see what happens. Next on the agenda is I guess we're going to talk about Gaza and Hamas and aid and starvation. Um, how do we see this, Raleigh? What do you think?
Oh, you put me on the spot first about this.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, it's kind of okay. So, I mean, I'm pro-Israel, but I generally feel like that. I want this conflict to come to an end. Like it's just going on too long. It's dividing this country. It's also, I think, I hate to say it, but it's starting to. I think it's starting to have a big impact on anti-Semitism in this country. I think, you're starting to see a rise of it because of this conflict. And, anytime there's stuff like, I mean, I didn't hear about this recent news, so I can't speak to that. But if that, what you're saying is they stopped giving them aid, they stopped providing aid to Gaza. Is that what I'm understanding?
Well, it's not that they stopped. It's just that it seems like it doesn't get to where it needs to go, and then there's a blame, you know, the Palestinians, or shall I say, Hamas blames Israel. Israel blames Hamas, and the bottom line is people aren't getting fed. But this is like, to me, it's kind of insane. It's like you're in the middle of a war. If you're Israel, right? These people invaded you, killed, strangled babies, killed people,
They
1,400
did all
people.
those things, but
Right.
it's okay to do
But
those to the Jews. It's just not okay to do those to the
right, but
Muslims.
and the problem I have is then
That's just the
so
way of
Israel
life.
responds, but yeah, in part of that response, it's Israel's responsibility to feed your enemy. Like, I don't get it. I mean, I understand it's supposed to be humanitarian, that there are innocent people involved, but those innocent people controlled by Hamas, and this is such a tough thing to try and figure out. We do have a couple of hands raised about that, but I want to get Mike to comment, and then we'll go to. I'm actually going to go to Haley first after my comments because this gets to her stuff, and then we'll get Aaron. Will probably cover all the topics that we did. So, Mike, what do you got?
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah. So the ceasefire talks broke down because from Israelis' perspective and the United States perspective, Hamas was just wasting time. They were making demands, and then they gave them a few weeks, the last few weeks, and then finally it kind of just cratered, and it was like Hamas isn't serious. They're not there, so we're just gonna retrograde back to like let Israel do what it needs to do, whatever. And then as far as the famine aid goes, the UN normally would be administering this aid with Israel's permission, essentially. And they've just been sitting there, and Hamas has been whining about it. Hamas is being starved out, essentially. And whether good or bad, or what you agree with the blockade or not, or any of this stuff. And then, I think there is an NGO that was started up, the Gaza something, but essentially that they're trying to give aid to the people there. And you see this back and forth, like starving children and this and that. And then you look at you do some research on this on the picture, and you're seeing like some poor kiddo that was born with a birth defect, skin and bones on a bed, and you see a mama Gazan in front of it, like these pictures, some might be true, some might not. But I think I think the sympathy meter is kind of down low for this, because this is just the same thing that we see over and over and over again in this never-ending cycle. But I'll leave it there.
Yeah, and what before I call in Haley, one of the things we talked about earlier in the pre-show is how, Hamas keeps making these demands and Israel would always acquiesce, like
Oh
give
yeah,
us 1,000 of our
right.
prisoners and all, and that just
Can't do it anymore.
refuels the Hamas army,
Right.
basically. They
Israel, yeah, and again, Israel's a rock and a hard place. They used to, when they did the prisoner exchange or hostage exchange, whatever you want to call it, they would have like 10 Israelis, or I'm just making it up, and then you'd have like 1,000, 2,000, Hamas fighters or Palestinian, that were caught up in this. And so Israel can't really do that anymore either. They're either they go in military, they can only go in for so long for such intensity, or they try to do the peaceful, they withdraw, and then they just exchange these fighters, and these fighters refresh Hamas's ranks for leadership and whatnot. That's where Sinwar came from. He came from that. And anyway, and it just starts to cycle over again. So I don't have an answer, but I do think that Israel's bigger than what we acknowledge it to be, and whatever they're going to do, they're going to do. And then you have, I'm sure Haley can illuminate us on the BB and that and the government and how it's seen and therein. But yeah, it's a shitty situation. But to me, this might be cold-hearted, but my kind of a harder core stance of like, well, if you are worried about starving and famine and this and that, go talk to Hamas. Go talk to Hamas. There is no other faction that you can talk to or negotiate with. That is the de facto government, whether we like it or not, of those of Gaza. And I don't, you know, don't quit throwing stones. But of course, that could be said on the other side too. But it's just like you said, rock and a hard place.
Yep. Go ahead, Haley. Welcome aboard. Thanks for stepping into Cafe Americana this
Hey
morning.
guys. Sorry, it's a slow morning for me, so I'm a little catching up with the waking up. I do just request if we are going to talk about this, I really want to try and stay respectful, loving, because we're all friends here. And this is a very, very obviously heated and whatever issue. I'm going to say just what I know to be true, and then I'm going to stop. Um, there are a few things happening right now at the same time that is true. And there are things that are being said, obviously, again, that are just completely not true. What is true is Israel has stopped letting in as much aid as they did in the beginning of the war. In the last week, there were 600 trucks that were allowed in all week, when it used to be Israel used to allow 600 trucks per day, for example. There has been some kind of strategic move by this extremist government to limit the amount of aid coming into Israel. However, doesn't mean that there is no aid coming in, not Israel, Gaza, sorry. Doesn't mean that there isn't any aid coming into Gaza. There is. However, it is not anywhere near the number that's needed. There is the UN aid that Israel has, again, completely cut ties with all UN NGOs, all UN organizations. They have nothing to do with them anymore. So those NGOs and those organizations that were responsible for distributing aid are currently not allowed to, because of this new relationship they have with that. there is the new aid distribution organization, the GHF, I think, Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, something like that. That is a U.S. Israeli together organization, like it's both the US and Israel, that is not anywhere near competent enough to deal with 2 million people needing food. It's just not anywhere near. It doesn't know what it's doing. It is completely incompetent, and it's a complete mess. So when you have all of those things added together, you have a situation that we're seeing now. And I'm disgusted by the situation. I am horrified. I don't think, I mean, even trying to use hunger or use aid as a method of I don't want to say a method of war, but a method of trying to get the bad guys is disgusting to me. I hate it. I'm physically sick and ill when I see these pictures, and I know that again, 80% of the Israelis do not agree with the decisions being made right now. And there's not so much that they can do unless we go to elections, which are going to happen in the next few months.
Haley,
Two
real quick.
things true at the same time, and I'm just going to end with this. Israel is incompetent. The incompetence has reached levels that are killing people in Gaza, both soldiers and civilians. At the same time, Hamas is using all of this to their advantage. There are reports that the IDF shoots at civilians. There are reports that Hamas is shooting at civilians when they're reaching these aid distribution centers. It's really free. I mean, Israeli media doesn't report because nobody really knows exactly what's happening down there because there's not a lot of ways to get information out. So again, two things can be true at the same time. Israel is completely incompetent with what it's doing, and the strategies that they're choosing are just completely horrific, and they have lessened. They started doing humanitarian drops again because they started to realize that the entire world is against them, and they should be. So that is happening at the same time that Hamas is using every single one of these issues to its advantage. It's still killing its own civilians. It's still killing soldiers. So it's one of the most extremely complicated issues. And if anybody, and I love you, Daryl, but if anybody says that it's just one side, it's just not true. It is a conflagration of all of the problems at once, including Hamas and including Israel. And I will stop for now.
Real quick, if I could ask Haley one quick question. So do you think that the Gaza, the U.S. Israeli organization, so you essentially think, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, you essentially think that that's just a PR move, it's just bullshit, it's not really there, it's not really
I think
effective.
that they're trying. I do think that they actually are trying to do what
Okay,
they're set out to do. I just don't think that they have the resources for it.
sure.
They're the UN NGOs, while they were, completely complicit in October 7th, some of them, and had Hamas members in there, and they were beholden to Hamas, people still ate. So that's where Hamas has the leverage is with the aid. That's where they get it. Uh, they know how to distribute the aid to their people because they were controlling it for decades and decades, but their people still ate, like. So there's a toss up here. Like, if we want to get rid of Hamas and their leverage on the aid that comes in, which everyone wants, that the organization you set up to bring in and counter them has to be on the same level, if not better, at handing out resources. But they just aren't. They weren't. It's that, like, there's not enough people. There's not enough aid. There's no security. IDF is securing them. They need their own security. Why does the IDF have anything to do with aid distribution? It's a whole fucking mess. And
Uh,
I'm horrified. for
Yeah,
those
but
children. I
let me
think
ask you this, Haley. Just and it's a very tough question for you, but what would you do? What's a try the quickest fix that you could do?
flood Gaza with aid. Flood it, no matter how it gets there. Flood it. Let's get them food. That's it. Like this is where I am. I don't care about it of the fighting surrounding it. These people need to eat. They need to flood Gaza with aid for the next couple of weeks. They just need to send in trucks and ships if they can, whatever they need. I don't care who gives it. I don't want. Do I want the UN? Of course not. But let's get every country to send stuff. What's the big deal? It's just aid. Let's get France, UK, all these countries who are complaining. Help. Send aid. Send your ships with and do drops like we are. Like Israel would definitely allow for other countries to drop aid. I think. I hope I'm right. I don't know if they would, but I think that if all of these countries said we're gonna send, all of our cargo planes, whatever. I'm not a military expert, so
Right.
I'm sorry.
Well, and
They would
that's
do it.
right. It's fair. It's interesting how Macron says he wants to recognize Palestine, but we don't see him sending any aid in there. So, uh,
Would you let Daryl comment on this? Because I think he has some things
no,
he
no,
wants.
but I'm gonna let Daryl come in after Aaron. Thank you, Haley. Come on, Aaron.
Well, Daryl can go for me. That's fine.
Okay, so then that's it. You're off the show, Aaron. That's it.
That's fine.
Only kidding. Go ahead, Daryl.
Yeah, I don't know where to begin with this thing. It's so frustrating. I'm glad to hear you, Haley. I agree with you. They need to flood the aid, but Israel doesn't they don't want that. I mean, there was a ship last night carrying aid that was intercepted by the IDF in the Mediterranean. So yeah, okay, I don't know what you're saying, but there's activists or whatever on there. Who cares?
You're
These people
talking
need to.
about the PR flotilla ship with those Americans on it.
There was another
That's
one.
not an aid ship.
There was
That's a
another.
PR stunt. You want to send an aid ship? Send a freaking cargo ship. Send a one of those with all those containers on it. Send those. Don't send a ship that's 25 feet in diameter with fucking stuffed animals on it.
Israel
It's a
Israel
PR
doesn't
stunt.
Israel's not going to let aid ships come in. Okay, they're just
Yes,
not.
I'm telling you that if it's coming from Western countries, Arab countries, countries that has nothing to do with Israel, they're letting them in. They're letting them in. Israel doesn't want to give
Yeah,
the
Daryl, and I also saw videos of aid arriving and Hamas just taking the aid and preventing the people from getting it. I've also seen those videos online.
Okay, if you flood the zone with aid, what is Hamas going to do? Just steal all the food and throw it in a big pile? Like what the
No, but
fuck?
I
Like
mean, this goes on both sides. I mean, you're acting like this is
no,
one
listen,
side.
listen. Israel controls the air. They control the water. They control all access into Gaza. Okay, if Israel wants there to be food there, they can make it happen. Stop, guys.
agree.
Stop
I agree
letting them
with you.
off. There's
I
little
agree with you
fucking
on
kids
that.
who are starving. I've seen photos this weekend of kids, little infants who fucking don't have
I
formula. This is a
I agree with
disgrace.
you on all of that, Daryl. Like it sickens me to my stomach. It
Well, this
really
whole
does.
bullshit, how Israel's now trying to blame the UN and they bring the whole fucking PR
But
tours in to show everybody the
you're
food
not being
spotting. Fuck
truthful.
them,
You're
okay?
not being truthful and you're not helping a situation when you say it's only Israel. Just as I say when my people are saying it's only Hamas. You're not helping the situation
Listen,
because it's both of them.
Israel could just take their planes, their cargo jets, and they could just start dropping food from the fucking
And
air.
They did in the last 24 hours start dropping
Oh, it's
aid
just
from
okay,
the air.
but it's not enough. They're not
I
doing it. Why
agree with
haven't they been
you.
doing it? Like,
I agree with
and
you.
another bullshit line they say is, "Oh well, Hamas is gonna." They turn everything into a weapon. Like they're gonna
But
turn
why
baby
can't that
formula
be
into a
true
fucking
too?
weapon.
Why
I mean,
can't that be true? Why can't two of these things be true at the same time?
because Israel controls the entire area. They allow
Let's
what
say
goes
that
in,
they
what
get
doesn't.
but Hamas does steal the aid.
So what? Throw more
It's a
aid in.
matter
Who
of
cares if
fact
they steal
though.
it? Throw more in. It's not an excuse, Haley. Like this is listen, Israeli society, you guys,
Don't let me in.
there's
Don't
something
say you
so
guys.
bad.
Do not
Listen,
say you guys.
okay,
Because
well,
I
the
keep telling
Israeli
you all the
society,
time
whoever
that it's
that
an
is,
80-20%, 80-20 issue. And the people that you have a problem with are the 20% of Israel. They're not the 80%. So I really, you
I
want to
look,
say your opinion, no problem. Don't say you guys.
I respect people like you who agree that there's a huge problem there. I Let's see how what the percentage is, because I see all kinds of polls coming out of Israel that it's way more than 20%. But whatever, okay, I'll grant you that. But everything that's going on here, like this is like a moral pox on your on the Israeli society, like that Israel's never going to recover from. Like even when we invaded Iraq, which I think was a horrible thing, there weren't babies who were fucking starving. Okay,
Yes, there were.
I don't remember us like
But that's,
starving all the
yes,
children in
there
Iraq.
were.
Okay, I don't remember little Iraqis holding up their little infant children and they're like skin and bones. Okay,
No, that's because they were blown up. That's why. So,
listen, this, even if this thing ends tomorrow, okay, Israeli society is gonna be an albatross around their neck for like 50 years. The
I
whole world's not gonna forget this thing. Like, I don't
I
know what you guys are
disagree.
gonna do.
I unfortunately agree with you.
I disagree.
I do.
Because if it was going to be a scourge on their society, you would have more countries involved. So that's
It's
why
gonna
I
get worse,
disagree.
Kenny. It's gonna
I
get
don't
worse.
I don't think so. All right, so I'm gonna let my good friend Aaron, who's been nothing more than patient, finally come in and address everything, Aaron. It's a lot on the plate.
All right. Look, to start with the Epstein, you don't get to choose the seriousness of an issue once it becomes thermonuclear and spreads. You're just now feeling it, because when you look at MAGA, alt-right, new right, ultra MAGA, whatever, all the variant uh, uh, sort of categories in the last decade, uh, they fed and still do on deep state conspiracy. Uh,
Aaron, I'm going to cut you off for 1 second. Do me a favor. Hold on to Maxwell. Go right into Israel, what
okay,
Haley and Daryl
sure.
were just talking about.
Well, I mean, so just at a practical level, before the Hamas assault invasion on Israel, there was 600 to 800 food trucks a day that were going into Gaza. The thing to realize is just it's like a math problem, right? You have 2.2 million people. People need 2 to 3,000 calories a day, and then more importantly, at least 700 of those have to be fortified, which means protein and iron, right? I mean, this is sort of human math. It doesn't matter where you are. There's no sort of special edition of us or not. So when you start kind of modeling that out, just at a very basic level, the 5 billion plus calories a day that you have to have a 2.2 million people live, in the 35 billion a week, the 150 billion a month, you start recognizing the scale of the problem that you have. And I think it's pretty clear that Israel's policy has been, in some ways, the Lebanon policy of the 80s, which was a very high kinetic war in Lebanon that, regardless of the sort of civilian configuration, it's an assumption that the civilians are supportive of the factions, and so they're just part of the war, and that was the way of the conventional way of fight that Israel had in prior generations. That caused really a complete fissure in Israeli politics. That's why you got figures like Sharon that went into politics primarily because they were overruled eventually because Israeli society, and I would say their partners, just looked at it as another really Middle East war, and Israel is supposed to be a modern democratic state with modern Western values, etc. So those two things just didn't wash. And so Israel then went to really sort of an asymmetrical strategy, like we did in the war on terror, which is they got really small. They weren't a conventional force anymore. And then so when this fight started, Israel mobilized, 700,000 reserves that were really not reserves trained for a large conventional fight, and then they launched into this war. I believe that the Israeli campaign is really a sort of a strange combination of their Iraq and sort of Vietnam mixed together, and it's splintering Israeli society because it has the same features, right? If you look at America in Vietnam, or by the time you get to Iraq and the Middle East wars, right? The top third, just was able to not serve in Vietnam, right? Because they were in college. I mean, that's one of the reasons colleges sort of exploded at that point in the late 60s and 70s. We don't ever really talk about that in the United States, because there was just so many young men who from middle class and above families who were not going to fight in Vietnam. And the parents were basically willing to write checks, very similar to the Civil War, when rich people would get someone to fight for them. Um, and then really the middle third, tried to delay by joining the
Right.
National
Well, so
Guard,
are you
et cetera.
suggesting this is
And
what's happening in Israel right
well,
now?
yeah, I mean, it's their version of it because
Hmm.
it doesn't look like American society, but you could strangely look at the Orthodox that don't serve as sort of the upper third that's able to not fight the wars, but in many ways get a large amount of benefits in society. Um, and then this sort of, you can almost call it burnt out middle third, that's having to do all the lifting. And as a friend of mine across the street, who came back, and his brothers just coming back, and cousins and everything else in between, serving 6, 9, 12-month tours. They said, look, if I wanted to be active duty IDF, I would have stayed active duty IDF, right? Like, I didn't sign up for the reserves and the IR and the IRR, just so I could be called up and serve, consistent 6, 9, 12-month tours. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. And then also structurally, the campaign was sort of backwards, which was, airstrikes because the conventional forces weren't ready. Right. So my thesis on the failure of this started from the beginning. What needed to happen is a very, very broad special operations campaign. You still would have had civilians killed, but it just would have had nowhere near the numbers of civilians, and you wouldn't have lost the narrative, right? Fundamentally, and we might not like these things, like, don't lose the narrative. Well, unless you want to run an authoritarian society for real, then you have to recognize that not losing the narrative is a critical part of keeping your political capital, whatever the situation is. So I think right now Israel obviously lost the narrative. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. Um, at this point, I believe there's a de facto recognition of a conceptual Palestinian state now. France is really going to is one of those first two, three movers, because the Francophone world is a whole bunch of small states, right? They're sort of influence states, and then they're post-colonial states, whether they're in Africa, Caribbean, South America, Asia. So you're going to get in the next year recognition by 10 to 20 of those. And then obviously Belgium, Luxembourg, Liechtenstein, Monaco, on and on and on. And then that's going to, I think, trigger the Spanish Portuguese version of that. And the Spanish Portuguese is the same thing. It's a huge, obviously, South America, Central America, Caribbean influence. So you're going to get a wave over the next 2 years of not a recognition of sort of a defined boundary of what you call a Palestinian state, but the thing called the Palestinian state. And
So
Israel's not going
it'll
to
be
fight
like
the narrative.
a philosophical thing, not a physical thing,
Well,
until they can
the
figure
issue
out
is,
where the
yeah.
Palestinian, like, I mean, Gaza is they're gonna have to
Well, no, but
rebuild
no, but
for.
so James. So the issue is not that it's philosophical. It's that it's the way international relations work. Once something becomes sort of de jure, then it becomes de facto. So
Hmm.
right now is the de jure phase of it, right, where you're just going to get a wave, and I think it's not going to stop, of well over 100, probably 150 in the next 5 years. Israel is going to use, I would say, the traditional model, which worked when it was one Z, two Zs, that, oh, they're anti-Zionist, they're anti-this, it just doesn't work when it becomes basically the non-security members of the UN. And I think the cat's out of the bag on that. And the big trigger to this, I mean, I would argue this was always going to happen. The question is, will it take 50 years? The big trigger on this was just the complete mismanagement of the Gazan war, and the continuous sort of double down and triple down on the policy, when it looks like just Bibi's looking to just stay in power at all costs until the next election, and then creating a binary in the next election, which is either you're pro-Israel or anti-Israel, and I think that's his final bet. And I think this is the most important election since Golda Meir resigned, basically, in Israel in the last 50 years, because because this is the die is cast after this, right? Because you could make an argument, as Haley was saying, 80% of Israeli society, which I think is pretty true, at least 50, 60%, is not in favor of the vast majority of these policies. But then you're going to have an election. And then the elections have consequences, and not just consequences for who the government is, but consequences for who Israel is. And so this is the chance to, in essence, start to rectify that.
All right,
Um,
let me. I want to bring Haley, and I got a question. Haley,
sure.
with Aaron. All right, so Israel's gonna have an election. Let's say Likud's out, Bibi's out. What what party's gonna take over, and then what is the next steps? Like what are they gonna make peace with Hamas? I mean, like what's gonna happen? Like what do you think the game plan is?
So, election talk is starting, of course. But people usually say like around November is usually when they're like, we think that election is going to happen around January, February of next year, 2026. Now, it all depends on what Bibi does with this war. If he ends the war completely, the way that Hamas has been asking for since the start, no ceasefire, if he actually physically ends the war before January, February, before elections, he has a chance to be elected again. Like it's just is what it is. Israeli society, Israeli voters sometimes have we're a crazy society. So there is a chance that he will stay in power if he ends the war completely, not just a ceasefire, not a part deal to get some hostages back. If he gets all the hostages back and ends the war, my prediction is he will stay in power. If he continues the war and we go to elections with the war still happening, first of all, the one who his biggest rival is Bennett, and it's going to stay Bennett. Bennett is right now forming his own party. He has to pick his number two, which could be Lapid, Gantz, Eisenkot, a bunch of Israeli politicians on the left. He's going to go for the center left coalitions, which makes total sense. It all depends on if Bibi has that same. If let's say Bibi does get elected and Likud does still get the most mandates, Bibi has a choice. He can try and do his ultra orthodox extremist coalition again, like he has now, which most people think that he's not going to because half of them already quit on him because of the law he's trying to pass to get the Orthodox to enlist in the army. So most of them quit on him with that. So it'll be much harder for him to form a right/far right coalition. So a lot of people think that Bibi will try and form his coalition with the center left and go back to being normal. If that happens, if there are center left who are willing to sit with him in his government, which a lot of them say that they won't, then he'll have a government, it'll be center left, and maybe we can get back to normal policies. But nobody wants Bibi in power. That's the thing. Like I said, most of the center left have already said that they will not sit in a government with him, no matter what he says and does. So he will have a problem there. Question is, Bennett has not ruled out if he will sit with him in a government. So he could have a coalition with Bennett. So there's a lot of choices that Bibi has to make. But the thing is, with this man who's been in power for 20 years, all of it is for himself. He doesn't care about what happens to Israel. He wants to stay in power. So he will do whatever it takes to stay in power, which means ending the war now, which means getting back all the hostages. Because like I said, if he gets back the remaining 20 hostages alive, he will be in power. If he doesn't, this is his biggest test right now. Regarding Hamas, the war, most of Israeli society agrees that the war needs to end, period. Whether even on the right, some of his supporters are starting to say that this has gotten too out of hand. So the war will end, and Hamas, we haven't eliminated Hamas. So the evidence on the ground is there will still be Hamas. What Israelis want, because we believe that this war has just been handled so poorly and so mismanaged and so many mistakes and just complete incompetence all around. What Israelis want is for the army to get out, for our boys to get a rest, for the reserves to go back to society, for everything to just calm down, so Israel can get its foot back, economically, culturally, everything. Stop this war, get the hostages back, start healing as a society, which Israel has not done since the 7th of October. This society has not had a chance to heal at all. And that's what's needed right now is the society to start healing. And at a later date, when we're stronger, when we have a government who knows what the fuck they're doing, then to go back and deal with just Hamas. Israel needs to heal. And what I wanted to say was there are two visions right now at war within the country. There is the democratic Israel, which is the one I stand for, the two-state solution people, the ones who want to live in peace with our neighbors. And then there's the messianic Israel, the greater Israel people. And they do exist. And they have a foothold in this government. And that's why people are very scared within this, Jews within and without, outside of Israel. Do I blame us for the anti-Semitism that is going on around the world? I can't, as a Jew, say that it's my fault. Of course not. But decisions that this government has made has put Jews all around the world in such a tough position, because while I am defending my state and defending my right to live in peace with my neighbors, I cannot defend what's going on in Gaza. I cannot. Period. And if there's any Israeli American, or I'm talking specifically Israeli Jews, a little different feeling, but Israeli Americans who are sitting here and defending to this day what is happening in Gaza, they're not being honest. And that's what bothers me too. And I had to get this off my chest, and sorry guys, thank you for that.
No, that's awesome.
The most complicated thing.
Yeah, listen, this is a very, very complicated show, and I'll ask the dumb, simple question. Where are we today if Hamas never invaded on October 7th?
Sorry.
Oh, you're muted. Let's
You
go
get a little
ahead.
intense with the muting, Jim.
Yeah, there you
James.
go. Yeah,
Well,
I didn't mute her.
No, that was my fault.
Okay.
With the guy from Iran, when I asked my question on two-way if Iran had anything to do with October 7th, and he was like, no, of course not. There's no evidence whatsoever. I still think that that's complete bullshit. So I think Hamas was taking their orders from Iran 100%. So if Hamas never did October 7th, I think it would still be the status quo. I don't think anything would be different. We'd see here and there, rockets, and it would just probably be operation after operation. I don't think anything would have, it would have just been the status quo of October 6th. Nothing would have really changed there, unfortunately, either.
Okay. Aaron, you
So
wanted to comment?
yeah, so I think one fundamental challenge that Israel now has with Gaza, and this goes back to Sharon, and I think a lot of people don't sort of, even Israelis, just don't want to kind of it, the sociology of being Israeli is one of the hardest things in life in the modern world because it's a reactive, survivalist mindset, and the challenge with that is that it's hard to go backwards and look at history and the deterministic components of history and see, well, what did we do here, or what happened here, and how did that help get to here, or foster something to get here, good or bad. So I'd say one of the most catastrophic policies yeah, I think it is actually in modern Israel was when Israel pulled out of Gaza, because everybody that was rational, not just in Israeli military life, but in political life around the world, recognized, well, that's a vacuum, right? And power abhors vacuums, right? It's a Hobbesian world, right? You don't just walk away from however imperfect or semi-functional the security situation was. And the right wanted to have a snap break because of those messianic believers in Israeli society. But when that happened, basically this Gaza's course was built. And whether October 7th happened cumulatively or it happened in 100 versions, eventually was going to lead to a reinvasion of Gaza. And the problem with a reinvasion of Gaza, like it's happened now, where you basically have leveled Gaza, is we go back to the Pottery Barn thesis, right? And I have a concept I call the reverse Pottery Barn, which only works when Israel does that outside its borders, meaning like with Iran or Houthis, which is they can break it and walk away. It doesn't work when it's really part of your borders. So at this point, this is really the problem, is that Israel can't walk out of Gaza. It's impossible. So now uh, Gaza will be, imagine the U.S. Permanently in a Vietnam or in Iraq. What that would do to its politics, to our politics. Well, take this up tenfold in order of magnitude. So that's the fundamental challenge. And then there's just a basic operational issue, right? So Israel has spent the last, really 30 years plus, I'd say 35 years, shifting from a conventional strategy to a unconventional strategy, asymmetrical strategy, right? Which means fighting at a small war, special operations, and that was because of the Intifadas, but also because of the design of who they were fighting then. And it's one of the reasons I've always been saying, when this kicked off, when October 7th, the invasion and the mass murder of Israelis happened, that the only strategy that made sense for Israelis is an asymmetrical strategy, not just because that made the most sense from a surgical standpoint. That's the design of the IDF. And no one wants to square themselves. I mean, all the ex-chiefs of staff know this, so they talk about it on the TV shows that no one watches in Israel because there's, reality TV there is, rotted their brains the same. But the point is that that in the end, that limitation with giving away Gaza and now having to take it back means that they're stuck. So they're
Yes.
going to be stuck as the scorpion on the frog, or they're the frog and there's a scorpion, whichever side they want to keep swapping. And this is going to be, I would argue, one of the more destructive phases in modern Israeli life. And there is no, in a similar way, I've always felt Israel is in some ways kind of a leading mirror of a lot of Western politics because it runs up against life in even a rawer way than we do. We have a lot of interface. We think things are tough and da 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 da, and they can be personally tough, and people can have difficult situations. But it's a whole nother level. It's factors more real and richer in Israel, and in that part of the Middle East. And so I
It's a
think
different,
the
it's
same
a
way as
different,
Bibi was really leading, and then Trump a decade later became. I've always said this, that Trump really mirrored Bibi, not the other way around, right? So the way that Bibi attacked Israeli politics, starting in really, I would say in the early mid 2000s, right? Like there was a different Bibi, right, from the one from the 80s and 90s. He was always right. He was rightward, and he was always, right of center for sure, and even touched some far right. But it was a different Bibi. It was a Bibi that basically was there for Bibi, as Haley was saying it, and everyone else be damned. And so I do think now Israel is stuck, and there's no one unsticking this. And it's not just you have to let aid in, fine, you do that. You're just going to cascade to the next challenge and the next one, and the next one. And so I don't see coming out of this. I think the whole national unity concept in Israel, makes sense when you're playing Model UN or you're playing, in high school, things like that. But when it comes to people, putting their career on the line and having to go back to their family grocery store when they're blown out of politics, because that's like the real world, right? The real world is once you're toast, you're just now another, you know, you're just another, hack that's got to go live. And a lot of people's ego and narcissism they don't want to do that. So they'd rather stay engaged and semi-relevant, but never go to power and never take the risk to build national unity. And I'll tell you, that's why this election is such a critical election coming up, because if the Knesset does not have a break on Bibi's power, and BB 75 going to be 76. So this is it. This is the last run that he has.
underestimate Benjamin Netanyahu.
Well, he's not going to live to 150. I mean, so we understand
No,
the
but I mean
basic.
politically, even his biggest critics never underestimate
Oh no,
him.
no, I agree, but the point is that this is my bigger point is that BB has figured out, which is pretty hard in the world to do this. Trump seems to be maybe trying to do that, but BB's figured out how to make something bigger than him that's out of his own control now. And the biggest challenge in politics is when a leader kind of gets in front of their skis. And at this point, this war is now in front of his skis in terms of his ability to joystick the control of this. And he's now stuck. And I don't see any path out of this that works. And it isn't just, and in his conception is that Israel's him, right? And so, it's basically I go down, everyone goes down. And I don't believe the national unity politics allows for that. At some point, people will break glass, but he will push to that point. He doesn't care he doesn't care about anything beyond that. And I just think that that's where Israeli politics goes. And I don't see the war ending, right? We grossly overestimate how long wars should last, how long they last in terms of, they should be quick. When you look at, there's a great database, a history of modern conflicts. And once a conflict reaches a certain intensity, on both sides, so meaning they can sustain the conflict, wars tend to last 5 to 10 years. I mean, they just do. And people could say it can't, it shouldn't, it's terrible, it's impossible. Those are all great things, feelings, vibes, whatever. They have nothing to do with the physics of how long a war can last. And I just see this thing not ending really. And big picture, the messianic side of Israel, and in the United States, wants a massive ethnic clearing operation. Like no one wants to talk about that, but that's like real. When you go eat like dinner at people's houses and they get real, there's a percentage of people who are like, that's where we're at. And and so I think they're trying to make life so difficult that when there's humanitarian corridors opened, they hope that a large percentage of the population leaves. Um, I don't know if that's going to happen. I think those corridors, when they're established, whether it's Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, those are really the only three that you can have. I think you might be able to have a quarter of the people leave. I don't know if it'll be as big as half.
Yeah, that's going to be the challenge. But that sounds more like a sensible strategy uh on
But you
BB's
do
end.
understand that's the destruction of Israel as a World War II
Hmm.
grieved society built off of an ethnic destruction that was the concept of what Israel was, right? Like this
Yeah.
now Israel's another state in the world that does another state in the world stuff.
Yeah.
And you can't kind of construct a spiritual thesis anymore. No one buys that once you ethnically cleanse Gaza from half of its
Well,
people.
yeah, and it's not it it doesn't reflect well based
But
on
that's my
past
point. And
history.
so
Yeah.
and so that will be Bibi's legacy
Yeah.
is
Yeah. Yeah.
that people around the world will not they'll view um, Israel in the same way that they view every other state that applies
Right.
power to minorities and to conflicts that are nearby, whether it's Colombia,
Yeah.
with the
All right.
FARC, whether it's,
All
you
right,
know,
Aaron. So what I want to do now is quick. We're running over already, which is fine. I don't mind. But Aaron, just quickly, give me your take on the Maxwell thing that I cut you off on.
yeah. So I mean, I think with Epstein, you don't get to choose what people latch onto and why. And you could sit there and argue it's a shit. People shouldn't talk about. They should talk about housing price. Da 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 da. Da, right? You sound like Democrats do, and who are going to go get slaughtered when they're like, "Don't we? Doesn't everyone realize inflation's on the way down?" And rah 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 rah. Rah. Like, no, no, you're walking to your chainsaw, and GOP is walking to its chainsaw, and you're not going to stop it unless I would argue at this point you can't stop it. The only thing you could have done a month ago, and I was the only one out there saying it, is you have a special prosecutor because that allows you to punt it, with all of the discovery and inventory and building the team that it takes 6 to 12 months to do, and then they do their version of a Federal Reserve PowerPoint briefing every month that no one can understand, and then you can just point and say, yeah, that's all I can do, and that's it. And the problem is that when you live by the knife, you die by the knife, right? When you spend a decade and a half, or more saying everything, the fact my tea is cold now is a deep state conspiracy, like every single thing. And then you finally need some of the tools of quote unquote deep state conspiracy to actually work for you politically. Well, you
Yeah.
you don't have the ability, the internal support to actually step out. So think about it. Trump is in a position now, and more importantly, the rest of the administration, they feared or calculated one or the other that having a special prosecutor would be worse off than going through this chainsaw sandwich they're going through. So that tells you how disconnected they are from these mechanisms that work. I mean, these political mechanisms work. And at this point, it's too late. I mean, you can do it, and they probably will, but it'll be too backwards at that
You
point.
know where they really screwed up is announcing anything. Why did she have to say there's nothing there? Why didn't
Well,
she just
because
say
remember when
we're
so
still looking at it?
no, but
Two
here's
years
here's the
later, we're
point.
still looking at it.
This is if I could real
Yeah,
quick.
Mike, Mike, yes.
The thing is every time whether it's Trump or the Democrats, lately, the last 20 times it's been touched, it's been Trump. Every time they touch this thing, they're resetting the clock on
Right.
the bomb to go off
Yes.
over. So this
100%.
is my argument is that okay, do you think let I mean the Democrats, if they're really smart, they'll touch on it, they'll get some kind of political mileage from it, but they're not really going to embrace it. To be fair, like MAGA, like Trump, that said, you elect me, da 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 da, all this big show and dance song and dance about, Pam Bondi with the binders and every time you touch this damn thing, you reset the clock to a certain degree, in my opinion. But that's
Yep.
all.
I agree with Mike 100%.
Yeah.
And I do think structurally, uh, Trump owns this now because his brand is anything I say. If I
Hmm.
say it, I own it,
Hmm.
right? Because I'm sui generis.
I
I'm
am MAGA.
top. Yeah, I'm top dog.
Right.
Well, for whatever reason, wanted to, and my view is, I think he's now in a weird game of hat and ball, and what's risky is if this gets worse, does he try to do something else to deflect it? And at this point, really, there's only two things that can deflect this that are big enough. You go hard at trade, which then blows up like we did Liberation Day economically, and then now you got to go taco mode. But it does reset because as much as Epstein matters, it doesn't matter as much as the long bond going up 1 percentage point, or everyone freaking out economically because trade is impacting prices. So there's that, and then there's attacking and destroying the Federal Reserve by firing all 100 bank board members and just leveling. And at that point, Epstein goes away, and then he's in his own sort of, we'll call it, tacoing cycle. And if he sort of stretches that over weeks and months, by the time people are done getting back to quote unquote normal, maybe 80, 90 days later, they're so exhausted, and it's just sort of like, that you probably bury Epstein in that landslide
Yeah,
of, of
I would,
economic hell.
right. I would argue that, and in a way, I do agree, but I also agree. I also believe that, you know what? If you just ignore this thing, let the reporters keep coming at you, just keep kicking the can down the road with your comments and just let it die.
I
Let it
mean,
die a
that
slow
works
death.
for Trump, but I'm telling you
Yeah.
what they're doing, and people don't get this. It's just like Bibi in Israel. They are setting up the house for a landslide in 26. And what people don't get is that one party can be supported less than another party, but the vote in a midterm is a proxy vote, right,
Yeah.
on that party.
Yeah,
A great
it's not a
example of this,
national vote.
a
Yeah.
great example of this, and it's exactly the same. If you look at the polling at this same time for the GOP in 2009, as the proto kind of Tea Party was getting framed, the GOP had a lower rate, almost exactly like this, a lower rating than the Democrats did, who were in power at that point. It didn't matter in 2010. That was a proxy vote. You're not voting in midterms because you like the other person more or the other party more. You're voting against the party that has the power. And that's something the GOP and MAGA just doesn't want to put your head in the sand and say, like, oh, the rules are different
I
for us
mean,
because.
Go ahead.
I've been saying that they'll take back the House. I think they will take
But
back
you
the House.
understand that that completely transforms everything politically.
I do, but I think that that's a good thing in the presidential election because then those freaks come back out of the closet again, and you start
Yeah,
hearing
but I mean,
about
so
all
so
that
so
tranny
now
stuff
you're
again.
building Israeli version of American politics, where basically
I
we're
think
just
that all
blowing
that,
ourselves up using electoral cycles.
well, I mean, that's
That's the
I mean,
system
these
we
are
have right now.
choices. You don't have to blow yourself up every election cycle to
I mean,
then.
it's what's going to happen because both sides can't agree on any or won't agree on anything. They're constantly fighting each other. I mean, basically Washington is just a place to go get rich now. It's an empire in decline, Aaron. It's an
Well,
empire in decline.
compared to what other empires not in decline faster than us? Remember, the world, if it's competitive, you can look bad, but if everyone else, like we used to say in the army, you don't have to be great, just suck less. And if you suck less, you beat that enemy.
Yeah,
And that's just what it comes down to. So we are in a competitive mindset and environment where, yeah, we can suck at a lot of things, but ultimately we suck less. And so now that's not a convincing, you don't want that as a bumper sticker that says, it's okay, your little Johnny or Miriam just sucks less at school. But it's sort of true collectively. But my point is these are all choices, right? Like this isn't physics. It isn't like the sun is moving us differently and we're stuck doing this. It's like these are choices Trump and that inner circle are making as priorities, and they're not including, and I said this from the beginning, that the inability for Trump to see the Senate and House as a set of institutions that they want to make sure succeeds politically, meaning they stay in power,
right.
is a new feature. It's not a bug of modern executive politics. You see every single leader doing this, whether it's Biden, whether it was Obama, whether it was even W. Really, you haven't had since really HW and Reagan a set of leaders who recognize if they don't bring along the House and the Senate, including when they're in the opposite party, right? People don't realize that Reagan supported Tip O'Neill and that version of Democrats that were running the House because they had the ability together to cut deals that they knew the Senate that was swapping back and forth between Republicans and Democrats in the 80s, um, because they were really close to the middle, really fundamentally, that they could sleeve those deals right through that Senate and get that legislation. You don't have like that's not Trump's approach, and that's not the modern executive's approach to power. It's take it all. Well, okay, that works for a minute while you got it all, but then you lose it all, and now
Yeah,
you
then
you
you can't
burn.
govern. All right,
Yeah,
let
you
me
can't govern.
I'm gonna start wrapping up the show. I'm gonna bring Haley back in because Haley wanted to talk about the picnic. So Haley, come back in, talk about the picnic, and then I got a bunch of things to talk about. I'm gonna defer to Mike also and Raleigh if they have any closing comments. But go ahead, Haley.
Thanks. I just wanted to remind everybody since we're getting pretty close, it's 2 weeks away. Like less than that now.
Yeah.
Um, just I wanted to just like let everybody know this is like a very casual setting. And we really do when we put in the event that we want everybody to like bring, like kind of like a potluck thing, like we highly recommend it. Because like don't have that much money to spend and like set everything up logistically. So just want everybody to understand like we just really want to meet and like hang out and just like really chill with everybody, but just like understand this is casual, but anybody is welcome to bring anything they want. And
Can you and Deborah just tell me what y'all want me to go and buy and bring like morning of?
I'll I'll tell you morning of rally. Don't worry.
All
I
right, thank
take
you.
care of you
That just takes
specifically.
the stress out.
No problem. But just, just wanted to give everyone that like FYI, like it is in the park. It's hopefully going to be a really nice day. If not, we'll figure it out. But yeah, we're really excited and it's going to be great. Just wanted everybody to understand like this is going to be pretty casual, but we're really excited.
Yeah, I'm very excited too. So, a couple things I'm going to close with. Mike, did you want to say anything before I go on my little thing and close the show?
No, I think that we're definitely in the doldrums of summer, and not really. We're just kind of recycling on the same thing. I would say for the midterms, I have a counter position on that, but that's okay because you see that with the. I think that you're having the whoever, I don't know who the individual is or individuals, but the Karl Rove of MAGA start talking. They're putting things in Trump's ear like redistricting Texas and some other things. And I don't know if you can do that before the midterms and get a gain out of it, or if that's like for the cycles after the fact. I would assume it would be later on. But we'll see. We'll see. And again, the more time that is spent on this, looking backward to the Obama treason, whatever that is, it's not helpful to focus on the wins that you already got, and really hammering that. I think this fall will be very interesting. But yeah, no, don't have it. It's very sad in Gaza, Israel. And I do think it is very interesting that Alan was talking about Macron, that you brought up, the first G7 country to do so. But yeah, not much there, but we'll see next week.
Raleigh, did you want to say anything before I go off on my thing?
Yes, I just want to say I hope there's like real news coming soon because it's just kind of a slog fest hosting these podcasts, and
Yeah.
it's the same thing talking about it every day. It's like I want there to be something, even if it's just like viral videos online. I'll take that.
Yeah. I was so I'm gonna conclude. First of all, just let everybody know with Andres had to fill in at church, so that's why we're gonna miss him for a little while. I think he will be at the picnic. Um but he'll come back to hosting the show at Mike and I when he's available. But being that he won't be available for several weeks, what Mike and I were talking about is possibly inviting, each week a different host. Like today, we brought Raleigh in as a co-host, and we'll probably finalize our decision this week for next week, and we'll invite part of our community to co-host with us, and we'll do that until Andres comes back. So if anybody wants to co-host, hit me up, and then we'll take it into consideration.
Oh yeah, I
So
was going to say too.
yep,
I posted the in the Discord. I posted the link to the show, and I also let folks know if they want to be added to your email list to contact you
great,
therein. So folks
great.
know.
Awesome. All right. So you guys know I've been traveling cross country now. It's 2 weeks, and we're going to start heading back. So we're in LA now. We're in Hollywood. Actually, I'm in Glendale. So um, some of my experiences in terms of the economy. Um, So the Canada thing is a real thing. Okay. Meaning, and I experienced this before I left Florida. A lot of snowbirds were selling their houses and going back to Canada and kind of like abandoning America and coming cross country. Um, a lot of tourism is down. You're missing a lot of not just Canadian, but like, the Canadian thing is for real. A lot of Canadians aren't coming into this country this summer to as tourists. And then I guess, foreign wise too. I guess with there's definitely some kind of Trump effect for that. So I saw that. Now, in terms of, since we drove, I kept my eye on the gas prices. So our first stop was St. Louis, Missouri, where we saw ML Shaw, right? My co-host Mike, and the gas prices were about $3.50 a gallon. By the way, I put 93 in my car. I don't put 87 or whatever. I always put 93 in my car. So gases were like 350, 359, something like that. Not bad, considering. Well, as we left, then we went up to Minnesota. It was gas prices about the same. But as we crossed over into, let's say, time zones, as we got it, Montana was maybe like an extra 20 cents a gallon. So 370, 379. But once we hit Oregon and California, all bets were off. California's over $5, like 506, something like that. But like I said, I used 93, and Oregon was like 489 or so. It's almost like $1 jump in gas prices. So you can see that. You can feel that. And as far as, we've been eating out all the time. And in fact, we joke that we've been eating our way across America because I've put on some pounds here on this vacation. But things are very expensive. And like this trip alone, when Jackie and I are done, this is like a $10,000 trip. Now, who can afford to go away for a few weeks every summer and spend $10,000? It's impossible. It's like, like I used to do this every summer. I used to spend summers out in California, do cross country every summer. I can't do it. This is the first time we've been out west since we bought our house in Florida 3 years ago. So this is something that Trump is going to have to deal with in terms of uh, yes, that's fine, Raleigh, and thanks for coming on, buddy. Um, yeah, so Trump's gonna have to deal with this, and this is gonna, it's always about the economy, stupid, and if the Democrats are smart, they'll start getting into the affordability issue and the working class and all of that stuff, and maybe start gaining some high ground. But if they fail to do that and Trump can get some victories, maybe he can hold the line. Who knows? I don't know. But what I'm going to say in the big picture is the country is not in the best state it should be, okay, in terms of affordability. And that's a problem. I mean, we saw it under Biden. That's what got Trump elected. And I told you guys at the last show, I can see Biden's infrastructure bill completely in effect on this trip because everywhere we go, they're working on the roads, they're working on bridges, so which is great, even though he added 4.7 trillion to the debt. Trump's going to add 3.3 trillion to the debt. So I don't know how we can fiscally, uh, uh, responsibly handle these things that need to be done in this country. But, I don't know. So having said that, part of this trip for me is my book that I want to write, that I'm working on. I met them on the two-way. So I've met Aaron, right? We've had lunch together, and Aaron and I have become very good friends. We talk almost every day. I've met Deborah Knox at the Table 17 event back, probably almost uh, less than a year ago, but it's been a while. And so I met Mike ML Shaw. Got to meet Mike in St. Louis, Missouri. Nice enough to come meet us in the park. I had Shakespeare with us, running around like a crazy guy, but it was beautiful. It was great. And Mike's a solid guy. I knew that just by dealing with him on the internet. So then we went and we met Peter Chott, who can't be on Step Into Cafe Americana because he's at church. But I met him up in Berkeley, right outside the university in the cafe. Peter's a super smart guy. He's going to be a lawyer. He's going to Pepperdine University, and I think in 2 weeks he's leaving for school. He wanted to stay up in Berkeley, but unfortunately he has to go to Malibu for Pepperdine. So, so that was a nice experience. And right from him, we went to go see Raul in San Jose, and Raul is a sweetheart. Raul came with drinks for me and Jackie. He's just a very loving guy. Beautiful place. Lives in a gorgeous area, San Jose, man-made pond. I think we've seen him sometimes on his show where he's running or he's doing his workout, and that's right around that pond. And Raul was terrific. And in fact, Jackie said, "Oh, what a sweetheart." And then yesterday we had lunch with Dan Olivo in Glendale. Dan picked out this great restaurant, the Tam O'Shanter, where Walt Disney used to eat lunch every day. In fact, they have a table with his little placard saying Walt Disney here. And Dan, as I expected, is a beautiful man. He's a great guy. I know we all fight on these platforms. We all have these different opinions. Some of us are antagonists, some of us are protagonists, But in the big picture, and I think you guys noticed with me over time, because I was a bomb thrower on these platforms, big time, right? Yelling, screaming, cursing. And over time, you take a step back because I look at things in terms of value. What's the value for me getting upset about something that I don't agree with, and actually losing my shit over it? It doesn't help the discord, or the discourse between us. And I realize that I'm 61 years old, I'm not a child. My problem is with politics, I get so revved up because I look at politics as sports. Me and Aaron talk about this, we love sports. So what I want to say to everyone here on these platforms is that we're all entitled to our opinion, okay? we all have to respect each other's opinions. We should never get it to a personal level. We have in the past, but as time has gone, by now we're at the end of July. The two-way started in July a year ago, right? We've already had an election. Now we're in the middle of this stuff. If we want to sustain our friendships and sustain our political discourse, we need to be much more respectful to each other, okay? And we need to be inclusive, okay? So I'm not going to lecture anybody how to do their shows. Okay, I respect everybody and I support everybody. What I want to do with Step into Cafe Americana is allow everybody in. If I have a problem with somebody, I will speak to them privately and I will rectify that problem. I don't ever want to be a show that does not allow somebody to voice their opinion. Okay, so that's my position, and I'm not fighting my friends and cohorts who have their own shows, who have their own way of doing things. That's up to them. But I would just encourage that we all be inclusive in terms of that, not equity, right? We'll do DI. We'll be diverse and inclusive. But I just, that's my suggestion to everybody, because in the big picture, like we'll see at the picnic, we're all friends here. Look at, it's the same people, it's the same faces. So we need to continue that. We need to be friendly and like hey, the ethos of the two-way, right? The presumption of grace to all, peace, love, and understanding. And I think that's the way we should continue this. Because look, what happens down the road to elections are going to change. Let's say the midterms, the Democrats come roaring back, right? And let's say Trump and the right, the Republicans, are total screw ups. Let's say this Epstein thing has thrown them off the rails. The economy is exploding out of the wrong way again. Tariffs are, it could all happen. And then who's going to run these shows and what? Because it's going to be the people on the left that are going to be more involved in these shows. Right now, they're not as much involved because they're on the losing end. They just lost a big election. But they're going to make their way back in slowly but surely. And if we want to do this, unless we're going to take our ball and go home, say, well, I lost the election, I'm not doing my show anymore. I don't want to be like that. You know what I mean? I want to be open. And I told Dan Olivo yesterday, I said, what I personally can do, and I was going to do it on one of these shows as a goof, is I can argue the Democratic side just as much as I could argue the Republican side if I wanted to. I could put in, Professor Dem and go off as if I'm a Democrat. Because I follow the issues as closely and I know how to make those arguments. That's why I always talk about messaging. So anyway, in the big picture, we're all good people. Let's all be embracive to each other. Let's respect each other's opinions, and then we'll take it from there. I think that's the best way to do things. Because, like I said, I'm meeting everybody personally. There hasn't been one bad person I've met, and I kind of expected that anyway. Because why would we all be here together on these platforms if we weren't good people and we didn't like each other, regardless of our differences of opinions? So that's all I'm going to say about that. I'm going to wrap up the show now. Aaron, you had your hand raised. I'm going to give you 10 seconds, Aaron.
Yeah, so nothing to do with all that important stuff. But where you are in Glendale, I grew up in Pasadena.
Yep.
And so it's basically Burger Jerusalem.
That's what Dan
So
was
I'm,
saying,
no, I'm
right?
very serious.
Hamburger Hamlets
So you need to go to a couple places.
Dan, you could come in.
And I'm dead serious. So you need to go to a place called Connell's, which is right off of Washington and Hill. And so Pasadena is a grid, so it's actually really easy. And then there's another place called the Hat. And these are two kind of old school places. You will get, bluntly speaking, a better pastrami sandwich and a burger in those places than you will, and I'm not saying they're the only great places, but I'm saying like the standard, right? There's other ones other favorites for people, but those are two that are, they've been around for, close to 70 years, and they're sort of institutions, and they're not expensive actually, which you'll
Which
be.
place? Which
Huh?
place, Aaron? What place, Aaron?
Connell's, Connell's, Connels. And then the
But
hat.
that's in Pasadena or
That's in
Glendale?
Pasadena. That's in
Pasadena.
Pasadena,
Okay.
which
Okay.
you're very close by.
Yeah.
I'm
Uh,
not a fan of the hat.
that's fair. I mean, everyone has their own, some people like Russo's and Frank's, some people like Lowry's. I mean, it's all, everyone's got their own vibe. But I'm just saying, like, when you go there, you'll enjoy kind of the invention, because
Hmm.
that's what it was, of fast food culture, which is global culture. We could argue if it's healthy or not. Obviously, like anything in life, out of proportion is not healthy. But the point is that like all this was invented in this region,
Yeah.
basically in the San Gabriel Valley, because the highway
The
system was
the
slammed
best
down.
pastrami sandwich you'll get in Los Angeles is at Langer's.
No, no, I get it. There's better places. Like you go to
Yeah.
Felipe's. You should go to Felipe's downtown. That's the greatest LA institution that's ever been invented for food because it's the longest stretch for 120 or almost 110 years. But I mean, where you are in Glendale, you could just drive 10,
Right.
15
Right.
minutes, go grab something and have fun, and you'll just see like these are local neighborhood institutions, right? Like it's not like you won't see a bunch of, there's not going to be Instagrammers and none of that stuff. Like these are like you're in a neighborhood, like you're in a neighborhood I grew up in. And so and the other thing is that by going over there, you could drive by basically where the fires were, which I was sort of describing a few months ago when we first kind of came on, and so that neighborhood is the when you get to Connell's, that's the wall. Basically, when you go a few blocks above that, you could see where all the fire damage is, and both in the business district and the residential neighborhood. But I would just say it's not like this is some big detour for you. It's not going to take you like hours to do this thing. Like, you just literally drive
Yeah, well, here's the
Sunday.
thing. We're out of here today, right? And I don't know if I'm
You
gonna
got to
I'm
go that way
yeah,
anyways.
I gotta hit Stephen Holder in Utah, and then I'm gonna hit Jen in Oklahoma. So, but we got to get back by like Friday the 1st, because then
Yeah.
Jackie's got a movie premiere on the 2nd. She was in a little independent film, so we got the 2nd, and then we'll be there. We'll be in New York slash
Well, what I'm trying
Jersey.
to say is this place is like 5 miles from where you are,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah,
And
yeah. If we're gonna hit something on the way out the door, that's a
and you could
suggestion.
you could text me
Yeah.
and so
So just
and
to
Langers is amazing. I mean, if you're
yeah,
going to stay there longer, Langers is
yeah.
incredible.
The
And
yeah.
and
So to wrap it up, just last night we ate at Formosa, which was funny. Formosa is like a Chinese restaurant in Hollywood, off of Santa Monica, but it's known for like films like L.A. Confidential was filmed in there and stuff. And it's a place I loved going because I go in, it's kind of dark setting, red booths, and you'd sit in the booth. It was never packed. And then some corporate person bought it and turned it into it's the same. It's got a train car attached to it to sit in and eat. So somebody corporate bought it and did the right thing because every time I was in Formosa, it was never packed. And now you can't get in there without reservations. It's just funny. And this has been years now because the last time we were in LA was like 3 years ago and we had to have reservations. So it was just interesting. And then we were going to go to the Whiskey A Go Go and see Robbie Krieger from the Doors. He's got a little band and they were doing some Doors music, but the tickets were like $700. It was some ridiculous thing. So we were waiting and there was one seat that was like $300, one general admission, and then at door time at 8 o'clock it dropped down to like 90. But it was only one, and there's two of us, so we didn't go. So it was
so
just
if you have a chance, if you're heading that direction, you can also go to if you hadn't been there because I know you lived in LA for a while, but Barney's Beanery also
mhm,
you could go to, which is a nice place with kind of a long history, especially modern music,
yeah.
uh, and acting kind of history, but especially music. I mean, that was the the most famous people I ever saw there. It was just like on a random Thursday night in 1988. Is 88, 87, 80, 87 maybe, 87 or 88. I saw uh because they used to live, they had a house that they basically obliterated right down the block. I saw Guns N' Roses there. So
Oh,
I
wow.
saw Slash and Axl, all of the guys there, and they were in the back. They weren't close to me, but they were in the back of by
Yeah.
where the bathrooms and the arcade is. But and this was like while they were blowing up, so the place was absolutely insane. People were walking around with whiskey bottles. I mean, it was like nothing you could do today. Uh, but but yeah, it's so if you ever get a chance to go.
One of our stops yesterday, and this will be the last thing. And then Mike, I already made you host, so if people want to stay in and chat, um, I'm going to stop recording after this, and I'll stop the live stream. But there's a great documentary on Netflix right now about a guy named Norman Harris. He has a place called Norman's Rare Guitars, and it's in Ventura, and it's a great documentary. I told Dan Olivo about it. He should watch it. Oh, by the way, the Billy Joel documentary, me and Dan are in Cinco Simpatico on how great the Billy Joel documentary. It's a two-part. It's a great documentary. But anyway, Norm's Rare Guitars, right? So this guy was a musician, but just to sum it up real quick, he started in Florida in the late 60s. He was a good keyboardist, had a band, came out to LA, tried to make it in the music business. And while trying to make it in the music business, he started acquiring guitars from people, $50, $20, and these things would be worth $3,000. So he wound up building this business, Norman's Rare Guitars, and all famous people go. Richie Sambora from Bon Jovi's always in there, Joe Bonamassa, all these great guitar players are always in there. So we watched this documentary. It was great. So we said we got to stop into Norman's to check it out. So Jackie and I went in there yesterday, was exactly like the documentary, and Norman was there, and he had health issues on the documentary. So there he was. Jackie asked him about it. He was just such a nice guy, and the whole staff was so friendly and accommodating. And I had mentioned a particular guitar I wanted, a Gretsch guitar, and Norm didn't have it, but he goes, "But I do have a Gretsch that you might be interested in the back." And I was like, no, because if he goes in the back to get you a guitar, that guitar is like $15,000. So I was like, no, 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 it's okay, Norm. You don't have to pull out that guitar for me. But anyway, really nice experience. So I'm gonna leave. I'll catch you guys on the road, and I will, if I'll try and be doing it 2 ways. I got to work, by the way. I got to work from the road, from the car tomorrow. I got to work. I got that power bar you mentioned, Aaron. So
Yeah,
I hooked the laptop
good.
up to the power
And then
bar.
when you get back, you can go to Steve and anyone up here in the
Yeah,
Northeast or that
yeah. The
wants
car's been great, by the
mechanic.
way. So,
Yep.
so we've been
Yep.
good.
Andy, if you guys are going to go have breakfast, go to Foxy's on Colorado. It's right by you.
Okay.
Yep. That's a good place.
Okay, cool. All right,
I used to
guys.
go there
Thanks
when
for
I was in college.
everything. Turning it over to ML Shaw, and I'll talk to you guys. I'm out of here.